Welcome, everyone. A very big welcome to you, Alex. Thank you so much for making time to join us this morning. I know that you are very active on all of your own channels as it is. So we're very grateful to have you join us. As I mentioned earlier, this session was actually completely oversubscribed. In fact, we were running a wait list for it, which is why I emailed everyone last night to say, if you weren't joining us, please let me know so I can let some other people join in, which is a great position to be in. Obviously, this content is very needed right now. We all could do with understanding how to leverage LinkedIn as a business tool as well as a profile building tool. I actually built the whole original women's chapter community via LinkedIn, but obviously over the years the platform has changed considerably, so I'm hoping to learn a lot today as well. So for those of you that might not have had a chance to read Alex's profile, she's a LinkedIn top voice for the UK, and she's also an official LinkedIn learning instructor. So as well as, and she also, I mean, Alex, maybe you can tell us about this as part of your presentation, is your hashtag campaign, which has been LinkedIn Local. It's the longest running campaign on LinkedIn, and you've built a whole community off the back of that as well, which is really exciting, which just gives you a taster of how powerful LinkedIn as a platform is. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Alex. I'll switch you to speaker view as well so that we can see you. And yeah, as just a reminder, everyone, please do keep your microphones on mute for the moment. But Alex, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. Morning. Thanks for joining me today. I'm really excited to be sharing with you this session. It's full of valuable, practical advice and some exercises, so we're going to get you to do some things. I am going to be talking to you through the screen versus showing you slides in the virtual world. I think I prefer that rather than you looking at some boring slides. And then at some point I'll share my screen so we look at my profile and kind of have a look at what good looks like and where you can make some improvements yourself. But before I do that, I'm just going to go back to my little introduction around my background to give you a little bit of context of how I've got into where I am and why I do what I do. So back in when I was about 24, I ended up in a leadership position working for a foreign exchange broker as the head of training and development, traveling around the world, training salespeople, and initially absolutely loving it, and then having an epic quarter-life crisis, followed from, after that, deciding that I was going to quit the corporate world and do my own thing. And the day I decided to leave, I wrote a post on LinkedIn, and that post, before that post, I'd been writing on LinkedIn for about 2 years. And I'm just going to say, if anyone's not muted, please mute yourself. So I wrote, I had been creating content on LinkedIn around career and graduate development. And I had a very small audience, and it was a very niche audience based on graduates and students. And the day I left my job, I wrote a post that had a photo of me staring down from the 45th floor of One Canada Square in Canary Wharf. Some of you will know that building, the iconic building, and it's the little kind of script that went with it said, "When I was a little girl, I used to dream of working in the really tall building with a pointy top by the river. And having reached the 45th floor, realized that my definition of success was wrong and that it was based on money, power, and status. And what I didn't realize is that with those things can come things like relationship breakdown, depression, stress, anxiety. But sometimes it takes getting to where you want to be to realize it's not where you're meant to be." I shared that post with that photo at about lunchtime, and by the time I got to my leaving drinks, 80,000 people around the world had seen it. And that had really kind of catapulted me into the limelight on LinkedIn, even though I had been creating content on there for a while. And that was really the start of my journey, and is what a lot of people kind of remember me for in terms of people that have followed the journey a lot longer. So that was really, for me, the starting point, is when I started to show up authentically, vulnerably, honestly, and just being me, without the mask, without the facade, like just coming and sharing what was important to me. And all of a sudden, my network exploded because it was no longer talking to students and graduates, but it was talking to anyone from any country, demographic, status, etc. That actually a lot of people related to that. And we're going to talk a little bit about content and relatability. Now, as Michelle said, the platform has massively changed in the last 2 to 3 years. A lot of that has been driven by the acquisition from Microsoft a few years ago. And the way it's changed is the fact that before on LinkedIn, I mean, what did we know LinkedIn for before, right? Putting your CV, getting recruited, headhunted, etc. Now that's no longer the case. I mean, obviously that's part of what it still does, but a huge part of it is content creation, and it's turning much more into the social media platforms that we already know. So things like being able to upload video like you can on YouTube, you can do on LinkedIn. Things like Facebook Live, LinkedIn Live is currently available to a select number of people and will be soon rolled out to everyone. A newsletter function, again, something that you'd probably do on MailChimp, you can now do on LinkedIn. Again, that's still in beta. Insta stories, LinkedIn stories is coming too very soon. So all these things that you could do on different social media platforms, you will now be able to do on LinkedIn, or it's coming very soon. And that's amazing because that has changed the dynamic of the platform so much. And it's just not a static platform anymore. It's very dynamic. And what I see a lot of is people not realizing that they should be changing the way that they use the platform, that it should be used in a slightly different way. The biggest difference, I'm not sure if anyone can type in the chat, what do you think the biggest difference is between LinkedIn and all the other social media platforms? Can anyone take a guess? Audience. Yeah, exactly. So it's all about the audience. LinkedIn has a much more professional audience. So obviously, whilst these features are there, it is still very much an audience that is professional, which is always key to remember. Now, with what's happening right now, we have seen a massive shift in the type of content coming out on LinkedIn, which is a lot more on the human side, on the vulnerable side, in people being open and authentic and honest. And so if there was ever a time to show up like that on LinkedIn, it's now. Something else that happened was that there was an influx of younger content creators that would normally on Instagram, on YouTube, etc., that have gone onto the platform and used it in that way. Whether that kind of drove the strategy of it turning into more of a social media platform, I'm not sure, but that definitely influenced the kind of content that was coming out on LinkedIn. The other thing to note is that, and it's super important and really key, is that there's a huge amount of organic reach on LinkedIn right now. That is like, that has a timeline. It's going to stop very, very soon, I'm sure, because that organic reach has been happening for the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years. And at some point, it's going to turn into a Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, etc., where you have to pay to be seen. Right now, you don't have to pay to be seen unless you did sponsored ads for a corporate company, for example. But in terms of from your own profile, it's very easy to grow visibility on LinkedIn right now. And that won't last forever. So when I go to conferences and do these talks face to face, I always say to people, get onto it now, because, you know, jump on that bandwagon, because, you know, in a few months' time or even a year's time, that might not be the case and you would have missed out on that opportunity. And maybe people in your sector or your competitors are way advanced in that. So definitely take advantage of that organic reach that is currently available right now. I've seen, given what's happened, a lot of people that would never post content starting to post content. So there is a lot more noise in the UK than there has been previously. And I look at these things and I spend enough time on LinkedIn to know. But when I started, there was almost, I could probably put on my hands like less than 10 people when I started were creating content in the UK. And slowly that is changing. And I think what's happened is pushed a lot of new content creators again. So I would definitely recommend that. The next thing I get my clients to think about in terms of when they're starting out their LinkedIn journey is, why do you want to use LinkedIn? And again, feel free to pop in the chat, because it'll give me an idea of how I can kind of tailor the rest of the talk for the next 40 minutes of what is it that you're trying to do on LinkedIn. Now, for people that's slightly different things. It could be things like, I want inbound opportunities. I want to position myself in a certain way, or a subject matter expert. I have a book to promote. I want to become a speaker. I want to develop my network more. I want to build a community. I want to turn it into a publishing platform so I can share my ideas and my value. I want to career transition maybe. So there's lots of different things that you can do with LinkedIn, but before you start anything, you really need to understand, why am I doing this? Because there will be times that you need to put yourself out there and content create, and your why is your guiding star, right? So I'm just gonna have a quick look at what you guys are saying. Raise my profile, launching a product. Oh, we'll talk about, okay, right, now I know there's a product, I'm gonna talk about product as well. To be seen as the expert, generate leads for connections and career opportunities, extend a network. Okay, fab. Cool, yeah, employer branding, we can talk a little bit about that. Create a community, awesome. Okay, so that gives me an idea to kind of touch on a few things that might be helpful to you guys specifically. Become a thought leader, that's my favorite. Awesome. So the next thing after you've got your why is thinking about, what are your objectives? And I recommend maybe working towards 2 or 3. And again, maybe take a moment, and I don't know if you've got a notepad and pen, or if you want to put it in the chat, either way. Write down, what are your objectives? What are you trying to achieve? And this isn't your why, this is more tangible. Is it, I'm trying to get in touch with 50 HR leaders. I am trying to find a partner for my startup. I am, what are your specific objectives? I'm trying to create a community of 500 people in the UK. So be really specific. What tangible objectives / goals am I trying to achieve with LinkedIn? And again, I'll just give you a minute to just jot down what those are. Okay, and then what I see when we go through that is, but I don't have anything to say. Everything has been said already. I'm not confident in showing up on LinkedIn. I'm too shy. I'm not ready. I don't have time. I'm an introvert. I'm not good at writing, video, editing. What if I say the wrong thing? What if I damage my reputation? Now, I'm sure all of you can relate to any one of those, if not some more than one. And those are things that are holding us back. And usually when I work with clients, there is always something that has stopped them from doing this work. And it's really about, like, actually what's happening in terms of your brain is that it's protecting you from anything happening that goes wrong. If I put myself out there, I'm going to be potentially judged. And it's actually going beyond that and going, no, actually, I'm going to do this. And there is a risk. There is a risk to putting yourself out there, but it's being okay with that risk. And for those of you that haven't seen my profile and have an idea of the type of content that I write some of the scariest, most vulnerable, most stigmatized issues in society. I have talked about having a miscarriage. I have talked about my mental health, having depression while I was working in the city, going to therapy. things that are very heavy and very difficult to talk about. And that is not without knowing that there is a risk that that might land in a certain way with the audience. But interestingly, I have grown my audience because of what I've written, because of the topics I've picked, because of the way that I've built my thought leadership on LinkedIn. So you need to think about, am I willing to put myself out there for what I stand for and what I believe in? And that's where you start. Next thing I want to talk about is your company page versus your profile page, because this is where I get asked a lot of questions. Should I be on my company page? Should I be on my profile page? Now, normally, until this weekend, I would have said your profile page, and I still stand by that. There is a massive return. There is a massive return on investment in terms of stats and visibility and engagement when you put content out from your profile page. I see so many people when they come to work with me and they go, oh, I've been doing lots of content. And what they're doing is coming out of their company page, which is why they're not getting traction, or they're putting stuff out of their company page and resharing it through a profile. And I'm sure there's one person at least that has done that. That doesn't get you a lot of visibility. What does is content that's coming out of your own profile. Even though I have about 37,000 followers on my personal profile, if I go to my company page, I have a lot less followers, but even if I had the same amount, the traction that I would get is a lot less. LinkedIn has it rigged in a way that things that come out of your profile page do better. That's not to say you shouldn't pay attention to your company page. So what I would suggest is, if you haven't done your company page, definitely do it. It's changed massively since, the last years. And I think this weekend I really sat down with it and got my teeth into my company page to kind of just update everything. And it's changed a lot. You can now invite people to follow your page. You can now translate your page into different languages. There's so many little functionalities. So I would suggest you go there, and if you haven't updated it in a while, update it and see the different functionalities and features that there are now. But again, I would say don't focus on it primarily. I would focus first on your profile and raising your profile, then your company profile. If you raise your profile well enough, you don't need to spend so much time on your company page. If you have a look at the likes of Brené Brown, Bill Gates, Richard Branson, Jeff Weiner, Gary Vaynerchuk, you will see that a lot of their content, if not 90% of it, comes out of their own profiles, and it's them writing it, you can see. So that goes to show that people are more interested, and we know this, people are more interested in following and engaging with a face versus a brand or a company, right? So what we're essentially trying to do is get you to a level where you become the face of your brand. And you know, that's very much for the one woman, one man band. For those of you that have a company, that have employees, you want an army of those. That's the ideal scenario. You want brand ambassadors and a group of people, maybe they're the sales team, the marketing team, the HR team if they're employing, because obviously I've seen the employer branding and attracting talent that allow you to, attract people through different profiles. And that's why it's important to train up teams versus just, so when I work with someone, with a business, I'll work with the CEO. I then will work potentially with the leadership team or the marketing and sales team. And, those will be the brand ambassadors. So you're going top down. And that's really when you start to see an impact, because it's coming, again, like I said, top down, but it's also, part of the employees are doing that too. Now, Michelle mentioned something called LinkedIn Local, and it's probably the right time to explain what that is to you guys, because it links to this company branding and brand ambassadors. Back in July 2017, so a few months after I left my corporate job, I decided to start meeting my LinkedIn connections offline for a coffee, and I hashtagged it virtual to reality. And I, at the time, didn't have a business. I was trying to get to know my LinkedIn connections more. and just trying to chat to them and, you know, see who they were and what they're about. And I kept on chatting to them online, and it just made sense to meet them offline. Back then it was very awkward for a lot of people because not many did it. But now it's very much the norm. Obviously not now, but it's very much the norm. And then I saw someone on my feed that I'd been connected to previously called Anna McAfee, who was based out of Sydney in a small place called Coffs Harbour, and she was doing something similar, and she hashtagged it LinkedIn Local. So I reached out to her and I said, well, you know, what is it that you're doing? Because that sort of seems a bit like what I'm doing on a one-to-one basis, only she was trying to do it in a group. And I said, I'd love to bring that to London. So I got in touch with her and she said, I haven't done it yet, let's do it together. And then 2 other people, someone in the States and someone in Belgium, got in touch with her. So the 4 of us became sort of these founding members of this concept where we were going to encourage our LinkedIn network to get offline, meet face to face, no agenda, no swapping of business cards, just good old get to know the person behind the profile. And we did that in July of 2017. We kind of took a little bit of a break. And then long story short is that by maybe September time, it got picked up by the CEO of LinkedIn. It then snowballed. 1.4 million people saw that post, and it was a video about the event. And before we knew it, we were inundated with requests of how do I set up my own community? And overnight, we had to build a website. We had to put processes and all sorts of things in place. And for 2 years, we basically actively scaled that community into 100 countries in over 1,000 cities around the world, which is pretty insane given we had zero budget. It was all not for profit. That was always going to be the case. Let's just say it was a labor of love. And one of the proudest things I've ever done, but boy, did it almost kill me. If you think about it, if we go back to what I was saying in terms of these brand ambassadors, in terms of the engagement, the visibility, the amount of people that were talking about LinkedIn Local on LinkedIn, for LinkedIn itself, if we were LinkedIn employees, that would have been the biggest, greatest campaign that they've ever done. Because so many people were talking about LinkedIn, especially people that had never engaged in LinkedIn or had never wanted to write a post. They were learning about it, they were chatting about it, they were telling other people about it. And those are the kind of campaigns that you want to run with brand ambassadors that get people talking about your business and your products and what you do. So for me, like that's, whilst we didn't work for LinkedIn, and I don't, a lot of people always get confused, I don't, this was a great example of, if we were employees, that would have been a great example of leveraging staff to get, you know, in front of a lot more people, essentially. And it's much more authentic and organic. It's not, let me copy paste a newsletter, send it to my employees and get them to copy and paste it into their LinkedIn, which I know a lot of people do. This is really letting people write what they want in terms of the brand and the business. Okay, so let's, I'm going to share my screen now to show you, because I want to go a little bit through the profile. So can everyone see my screen? Yeah, just a nod. Awesome, thanks. So this is what this area, so as you can see, this is all that you see. You see my banner, my photo, my headline, and maybe just the first few sentences, and these product providing services in the first few sentences of my summary. So if I call this your shop window, because if you imagine walking down a high street and you're looking for those gorgeous pair of red heels that you've been looking for ages, and they're very specific, and you're walking down the high street and you see a shop and it's got exactly those pair of shoes that you've been looking for ages, and you think, yes, those are the ones, I'm going to get them. But then you kind of take a step back and you see that there's a bunch of dried flowers in the window, the paint's falling off, the door's unhinged, you take a peek in, the shop assistant looks a bit grumpy, and then you're like, okay. And then you sort of kind of like, by the corner of your eye, you see another shop, and then you see these red shoes that are full of like crystals and gorgeous, and then you look, there's some nice flowers on the shop assistant, looks really happy and like smiley and warm and friendly, and it's got a fresh lick of paint. Which shop do you think you're going to go into? Right? This is your shop window. This is your virtual shop window. If it looks shit, sorry my language, people will not want to go in. They will just go away. And the reality is you sell the same pair of shoes that everyone else sells. So how do I make it look good and how do I make it sound good, right? So let's go through this. The first part is your banner. So this banner, the first group to recently see all of this rebrand that I've recently done. What I've gone for is my logo, so that it's right front and center. You've got my tagline, and then you've got some of the clients that I've worked with. There's different ways of doing your banner. Think about it like your digital billboard. Like, what do you want to instantly tell people straight away, right? So I've got some of my clients and my tagline. You can do things like your contact details, your email. Lots of people have done different things. For speakers, they've put books, find my latest book, join my latest community. So you can have a call to action instead. So just think about, what is it that I want people to instantly know and do? The next is your profile headshots. Today, with the phones that we have, there is no excuse not to have a good photo. So make sure that you have a clear photo that's high in quality. I prefer, if you can invest in a professional photographer, a professional headshot photographer, not just any photographer, a headshot photographer. So this image that you see in my banner was taken by a guy called Ivan Weiss, who's based in London, and he does all the headshots for my clients. And I kid you not, when my clients are like, oh, I don't really need a new one, and then I send them to him and they compare it to everything else that they've had previously, they see a massive difference. If you are a speaker or a author or someone that is very, run sessions like this, there is no excuse not to invest in a good headshot. They're not that expensive. So definitely get a headshot. No photo is definitely a no-no. That just doesn't instill any trust in me in terms of, who is that person? A lot of people don't tend to want to connect with people that don't have photos, so definitely put something in there. The next thing that we have is your headline. So this is really where you tell people quite quickly what it is that you can do. And I'm just going to check the chat whilst I'm talking. What is it that you can do to help them? So for logos and tagline for your brand, either personal or business, if you are a freelancer or small business, would you recommend to go for a graphic designer and pay for that, or build it on your own? So previously I've built it on my own. This brand that you see with the arrow was done by a branding agency that just did my branding. The background was done by a graphic designer, so that's kind of complemented my brand. And then I used Fiverr to get someone to do it. So if anyone, again, I could send those in the resources that with Michelle, in terms of if you want to update your banner, I can send you the guy that did mine. It helps if you've got an existing brand that they can work with, but he designed it of how it looks. So I hope that answers your questions, because you can do it yourself, but honestly, this looks so much better than what I had before. And I could show you, but it looks crap. So I would definitely say exactly Canva, you can do this. The only reason I'm not a big fan of Canva in the long run, especially depending on how high ticketing and high. So this is the thing, I work with kind of a lot of C-suite and corporates. There's a certain image I want to portray, hence why my rebrand. So however much you kind of invest in how you show up and look, that sends a certain message. So Canva is great, but in the long run, if you can invest in getting it done, then I would happily recommend that. Also, that cost me on Fiverr, I think like 20 quid. Or even less than that. So it's really not much, and it is worth it getting someone to design it versus you trying to fiddle with Canva. Yeah, wow. I'll send you guys the link so you can use the same guy because he was great. So next, a new feature. Sorry, let me go back to the headline. I missed that. So the headline is, yeah, if you've got specific questions as I'm doing this, I'm keeping an eye on the chat. You can do this two ways. Okay, don't pay attention to mine because I do it as a bit of fun and it's a bit different. I can afford to get away with that because I've got a large audience. For people that don't, I would definitely recommend using keywords and being very specific about how you help people. You can do this two ways. You can either use headlines, which are these kind of like different topics or titles. This really works well, and I would highly recommend it for people that have portfolio careers. Now, I do more than one thing. I'm mainly known for the LinkedIn stuff, but I also do a lot of graduate development, and I do a lot of kind of community consulting and stuff like that. So if I were to like pick one, and it wouldn't be these funny ones, I would probably go with these titles to describe the different things that I do. For those of you that do one thing or have one role, one sentence that describes it all is definitely the way to go. Think about keywords and I would stay away from unicorns, ninjas, gurus, because it doesn't seem to fly very well on LinkedIn for a lot of people. It's not original as well. So many people have that. So really think about how can I be original and different on my headline, and how can I tell people who I am and how I can help them. You've only got a limited amount of spaces, and you can also go on your phone. I think you get an extra bunch of characters when you're doing it on your phone. So definitely make use of that. The next thing is providing services. So this is very new. This is a section where you can be really specific and instant about what it is that you are doing and how you can help people. So definitely not everyone has access to this, but when you do, pay attention because it will pop up and you can add that so people can see straight away how you can help them. And then the next part I just want to mention, and this is sort of the end of the shop window, because this is as much as you can see before someone scrolls down. So you can understand that if you do not attract people within this space, they will not scroll down. And essentially what you want them to do is scroll down and find out more about you. So this is normally, so you can't get access to features, new features. It's on a rolling basis. So whenever there is a new feature, there's not a specific group that get it. LinkedIn has a way of kind of distributing it randomly almost. So you'll just see it pop up one day. In terms of your about section, so this normally, in terms of this 6-week online group coaching, I don't normally have that in there. But I put that in there just as a test the other day. Yeah, so some people won't see the providing section services. Some of you will. So I put that the other day because I wanted to see, with the amount of people that come to see my profile, will someone message me to get in touch about my course directly from here? And actually someone did, and someone booked on. So if you have something quite immediate, something that's going to grab people's attention like that, definitely put it in there. Once the 6th of May is done, I'm taking that off. But normally what you read in my summary is, welcome to my humble virtual abode. If you're reading this, it's one of 3 things. You've read something I've posted and you're stalking me. That's okay. I forgive you. Hit follow if you want to read more, or you've heard me on, and then you don't see anything. Now, if those first 2 sentences, ignoring the online group coaching thing, if those first 2 sentences do not completely grab someone straight away, they will not read more, right? So you need to make sure that you are hooking someone in straight away. So again, like just 2 minutes to think about how can I hook someone in? Is there something different about my career? Was there a moment I pivoted? Is there something shocking that people don't know about me? Obviously keeping it PG for LinkedIn. Just think about ways that you could get people to want to click see more to read the rest. Another thing to talk about in terms of the summary is, please, please, please write in first person unless you are the queen. And I don't think anyone is. And please make sure that when you are writing your summary, tell your story. You know, this isn't dump your skills. This isn't just, you know, like put whatever in there or have it empty worse. This is such a missed opportunity by so many people. And I think it is because it's scary to be like, oh my God, I've got to write about myself. What am I going to write? But use mine as a template. That's a really good way of sharing a little bit of who I am, but also how I help people. And also, how do you make people feel when they read your summary? For me, that's such an important one. You've got that, I always go by that famous Maya Angelou quote that people forget what you said and did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Totally paraphrasing, but you get the picture. This is really about, you know, I use humor, it's a little bit fun, it's a little bit quirky, because that's not very common on LinkedIn. And yesterday I was joking with my partner, and I was just like, my new tagline should be, I make grey suits look colourful. Because I was working with a client that's an executive search firm, and they are very corporate, grey suited people. And I got him to open his summary with, I never knew that having a heart attack would lead to depression, and following on from that I'd find my way out using improvised comedy. Like, who opens a summary like that? And this is someone that's very corporate, very senior, and he's really comfortable saying that. It took a little bit of, you know, convincing, but that's different, and it's something that's very important to him, and it will stop someone in their tracks and want to read more. So that's essentially what you're trying to do. Okay. Any questions on that shop window section before we continue? And I'll take a sip of. Loads of questions for the next few bits. Okay. So going back to the profile, one thing that I want you to pop down in the chat is finish this sentence, and I'll type it in here. If you know me, you'd know. So if you know me, you'd know that I'm actually an introvert. And that is probably surprising to a lot of you, given I do what I do and I speak on stages, but that is true. So just like 2 seconds for a bit of fun, and there is a reason behind this. If you know me, you'd know. What do people in here not know about you? What do people not tend to know about you? So just type it down in the chats. Oh, wow. These are awesome. Cool. Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely an introverted extrovert. An ambivert. These are awesome. So just a quick, for you guys that are just reading through these comments, can you relate to at least one or two of those things? Can you think, oh yeah, me too? Yeah, exactly. So the reason I do this is because very often we decide to hide parts of ourselves in our LinkedIn profile. We don't show up fully as ourselves. Now, I'm not saying, as my favorite idol Brené Brown says, do not live tweet your bikini. But what I'm saying is show up a little bit more in your LinkedIn in terms of showing people what is it that you're interested in. Like things like, you know, I'm a Arsenal season ticket holder for 20 years. How many people can possibly relate to that, right? I've jumped out of a plane. So again, these are things that we don't tend to talk about on our LinkedIn, But what happens is when you share these, relatability and trust, people start to go, yes, me too, I've done that, or I've experienced that, or I know about that. And what happens is you're starting to build a relationship and you're starting to build trust before people have even gotten in touch with you or you've gotten in touch with them, right? So definitely think about not being afraid to put a little bit more flavor of you and to not be vanilla and choose a different flavor. You want to be showing up in a slightly different way. So, I get that question a lot. So if you have a corporate job and you have your own business or community alongside, what is your recommendation for that window on your professional personal profile? I get a lot of people asking me if they should have a different profile. I highly recommend not to. It's such a arduous thing to build two at the same time, or build one. It's really difficult. There's no wrong or right answer to that, because it's hard with that one. It depends. I would talk to your manager and see how flexible they are for you to represent what you do. Some people are, some people aren't. You'll be in a bit of a pickle if they aren't, in terms of how do you do that? You can still do it in a very kind of discreet way, or you can go all out if they're okay with it. So I'd see what your boundaries are within your working environment. Now, I'm not too sure what you mean about highlights, Rebecca. So in terms of, if we go back to one thing that I wanted to mention in terms of using your employees to create content, an example of one of the posts that I did, and this was almost a year ago now, I wrote a piece about thought leadership not being original content, and yet it is original content, because whilst everyone kind of builds on what other people have said and done, and with their own flavor, it's different because their life and their story is different, and so the way and the lens in which they see things is different. Someone in the thought leadership space engaged with it, that has a big network, that we have similar clients. Someone tagged him and then he engaged with it. What happened is that post then got seen by a lot of his network. And then I got more people from his network commenting on this post. Now, I would probably say for the whole year, that was my least viewed post. It probably had having about 45, 46 likes and about 15, 20 comments, which for my kind of standards in terms of the network I have was really low. But what was interesting, and this is why I wanted to share with you this specific post, and I do, is because that one person that came from his network basically kind of got in touch with me, and she said, I love what you said. I'm really interested in talking about that. We got chatting, we got on really well. I didn't even go for a coffee. She invited me to a family dinner. Turns out she is the CEO of this large recruitment company. We got on really well. We kept in touch, and she asked me what I did. I eventually told her. She ended up becoming a client on my yearly program, which is the most expensive one. She then ended up in that program. There's a psychometric assessment I did, and she loved it. And she then wanted a few of those for her staff. And then I was doing a retreat on helping people find and reconnect with their purpose, and she sent some stuff on that too. All in all, that post generated more than £10,000, right? So imagine if you have me times many more in your company creating content like that. How much more times are you multiplying that, how much that post can generate as a single post from a single person? Just wanted to leave that there with you to give you an idea of the impact of what you can do in terms of the part that I'm coming into, which is content. Now, bear with me. In terms of creating content, really, like any social media platform, story is really, really important. People engage with stories more. They want to read stories. They make sense of the world with stories. Our primal brains are all about stories. So stories combined with value, so adding value to your network, and giving them a feeling, an emotion, is really the perfect recipe for content on LinkedIn. And now feeling, it's really funny because for a lot of people, they go, oh, LinkedIn, professional network, I can't possibly say that or do this, or, but actually you can. And if anything, you will stand out more. And I would say that emotion right now, there's a lot more emotional content than there is facts and figures. That's right now with what's happening. So like I said, if there was any time to start doing this kind of content, it's now. Just to give you an example, why do we spend so much time watching cat videos on YouTube? And why do we spend so much time looking at Trump memes? Because they generate laughter, or we get angry when we listen to Trump on the, talk about injecting bleach and all sorts of things. But they invoke anger, or they evoke happiness, or they evoke sadness, or all those sorts of things. And some people might not watch cat videos, but there might be another alternative of content that you consume because it makes you feel something. And that's really the kind of content that you want to be creating on LinkedIn, is that something that's helping people feel something, because that's a content that really engages people. Now, I go by like what I call the 4 rules of content creation. So thinking about, am I being real in my content? Am I being authentic to myself? Am I really just me? Am I relatable? Like, is this something that other people think, yes, me too? When you get that moment of people going, me too, you're onto a winner. Because people are invested, they're, trusting, they're building that relationship with you. Is it relevant? Is it something that people, need right now? A really good example of content like this is I'm doing a month-long of LinkedIn Lives. And it took me a very long time to figure out what I wanted to do in terms of the situation and how I could help people. And one of the ways that I thought about that was, what do people need right now? What is relevant to them? We're all in this situation. How could I possibly help them? And one of the ways I decided to do that is using my audience, but also using my friends who, because I'm bringing those two together. LinkedIn Live month program is doing so well is because it's very relevant to a lot of people. A lot of the topics are relevant. So being relevant. And the other one is recognizable. So we did talk about briefly the LinkedIn banner with the purple and the colors, but being recognizable in your content is really important if you can do, and if you can invest in that. Because what that is it ties your brand everywhere, where it's your banner, your post, your article, your video, and we see your logo and your branding all the time. It's just constantly, in the forefront of your mind. When people are scrolling down the feed to have happen is, and to basically look at what it is that you're doing. A good example of this is where I used to live. I made videos with some paintings of some shoes, which I painted myself. And it became such an iconic background to the point that Anna, who was from Sydney to my house and stayed over, took a photo in front of those shoes, put it on LinkedIn and said, whose house am I in? And then there was like 50 comments going like, Alex's, authentic Alex. But it goes to show that it's a recognizable brand kind of anchor. And that's really important when building your thought leadership, is what is your brand anchor? You will see I'm wearing red. There is always something red in, what I do, because I'm tying a color. You can also tell that one of my brand anchors in terms of a word is authenticity. It's everywhere in what I do. So again, those are important things. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to speed through the end. So the next thing you want to think about, okay, so now I know why, this is your strategy. So now I know why I'm doing this on LinkedIn. I need to figure out how I'm doing this. So are you showing up with articles, with posts, with videos, with live? You don't have to do all of them. Some of you might be more comfortable in one thing versus another. So pick, which one works for you for now. The other one is, who am I talking to? You can be creating great content, but if people are not, if not the right people are in your network, then forget it. There's no point. You want your ideal clients to be in your network, and then you content that adds value. Pardon. You think of value you add, like what content, what's important, etc. Another way to kind of look at how your growth is going and your visibility is looking at LinkedIn's SSI score or index, which is your social selling index. And what it does is, if you type it in Google, and I'll put it in here, social selling index. What it does is it gives you a score out of 100 and it tells you where you sit in your industry. This will give you an idea of, what relationships you're building, how you're doing, how you're growing, etc. It's a good indication rather than manually doing it to do it. And if you type that in Google, it will help. Now, having done this work for quite some time now, I see a lot of the same errors when people start to create their thought leadership on LinkedIn and build their brands. Where I see a lot of it is inconsistency. So whether you're talking about one thing, like you're known for one thing, then you change to another thing and another thing, or you show up infrequently and there's no consistency in your content. I know for sure that when Michelle and I were just talking about this before, is that I'm showing up very regularly now and everyone sees that. I kid you not, even despite what's happening, I'm having some of the best months in my business. And that's because I think primarily I am showing up every day. And I would say that even if you're starting, showing up a lot is important to make sure that you're seen and that people can see that you're there and you can help. In authenticity, don't try and be anything that you're not. When you are, people notice that and they don't like it. They might not engage with you. They might not trust you. Jack of all trades is when you're trying to be everything to everyone and nothing to nobody. You want to be really specific about what you offer. Whilst I do have a portfolio career, I put at the front my bread and butter, which is the LinkedIn work. And then people find out that I actually do other things. And then also, whilst I say show up every day, just be conscious of not burning out and not, oversaturating your network with content all the time that's not relevant or important to them. And then in terms of managing your presence, adapt. Like I said, when I started, it was about graduate and student development work. Now it's a lot different. So don't worry if it changes. You as a person changes, your thought leadership changes, your brand changes, your business changes, and it evolves, and that's totally fine. Just take those, that community with you on that journey. Get feedback when you're changing your profile. Ask people, what do you think of this? Run it by a client. I very often recommend my clients to do that, so that they can see that it resonates with the people that want to be reading it. Set goals. I'm going to write one post a week, one article a month, those sorts of things. Do a quarterly audit, see what's working, what's not working. Partner with people, collaborate on content, and those sorts of things. And that's it from me. I've tried to give you as much as I can in the time that I have. I hope that was useful. I need a glass of water after that. But you have so many questions. So Michelle, should I just go through them, or do you have a list of them? Go through them?
Yeah,
okay.
If you want to start, that'll be great. I think
yes. So
you did answer
the product.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm just going to go for the product because I said I was going to answer that and I didn't. I love to see products on LinkedIn because you almost never see products on LinkedIn. You always see service-based businesses. And there are two people that I would suggest you look at: Simon Bourne, the shoe guy, and a woman called Kate Lister, who's a florist. Those two, for as long as I've been on LinkedIn creating content, have always won product, brand, the ones that I appreciate. The reason being is that how many shoe people, like shoe designers, makers, do you see on LinkedIn? Almost none. How many florists do you see on LinkedIn? Almost none. How many florists and shoemakers do you think are on Instagram? A ton. How many, who mostly buys flowers and shoes? Corporate men, corporate women, right? So they are right in the playing field with their clients and potential clients, directly in contact with them, sharing their journey. So people are buying into this little business, this one woman, one man band growing, and people investing into it. And actually that they rake it in. The guy that did the shoes, I remember talking to him, and he was like, when I started using LinkedIn, very like not even nothing, I was on like turning over 20 grand, and then the year after he was turning over 200 grand. So you can see the difference in actually using it and being a product-based business, because you just don't have competition. So whenever I see a product business, I'm like, get on LinkedIn. If your clients are corporate men and women, right? If they're not, you should be elsewhere. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, those are the names.
Alex, I have a question about content. So what kind of format or content format generates the most engagement? Because I once heard that it was video, and
so it changes.
So is it algorithm based like other social platforms?
No, so status update will always be the thing that generates the most visibility. So those are the short little ones. That being said, whenever there is a new feature, always use it straight away and continue to reuse it. Because what LinkedIn does is it boosts people visibility, because they want people to see that other people are using this new feature. So when video came, the reason why you're saying at one point it was video was because they wanted it to be video, because they wanted to show people using video, so more people would use video and adopt that new feature. So whenever something new like LinkedIn, when LinkedIn Live comes, start using it. Do a practice run elsewhere, but start using it straight away. I've had access to it for ages, and I've only just started using it. I think I've had access for it for about a year now. And I know that if I had used it when I got it, I would have another extra 20K followers. That was my choice. But, take advantage of these new features and the kind of increased visibility and boost. What about using hashtags? So I use hashtag Authentic Alex. All my clients have their individual hashtags that are not used by anyone else. The reason I get people to do that is, and you will see this when I am showing people, sharing people's bios for the LinkedIn Lives that I'm doing with speakers. When I put their hashtag and I'm like, for example, I've got someone talking about emotional intelligence tomorrow. No, actually, let me use the one I just did, which was Jane, who talked about listening for leadership. She's a client of mine, and her hashtag is hashtag journey with Jane. So when I put her bio and I was like, Jane's going to be talking about listening, this is really important for now, join a hashtag journey with Jane session, people can click on journey with Jane and they will see every single content Jane's ever shared. So this gives them more insight into who that person is in one click. If people wanted to see Jane's content, they'd have to click on her profile, they'd then have to click on activity, they'll then have to click on posts, they'll then have to click. So you're cutting that journey by one click, right? And people can see everything that you've done so far. So always try and find an individual hashtag that's your own and something that's a little bit ringing. I prefer alliteration, hence the AA or the JJ. But this allows people to kind of find more, because on YouTube, when you see a video and then you've got all the suggestions and then you're like, oh, I like this person, I want to watch something else. It's the same concept. Once they read your content on their feed, they're like, who is this person? And then they want to click and read more of your content. And then they go into these, we've all done that, go into these rabbit holes of, consuming content of that same person. And then their whole life in half an hour. So it's like that. And then you can also do hashtag channels where, you're speaking to a specific audience. So at one point I had one called hashtag developing beyond, which was all around personal development, and it spoke to a certain audience.
What about, Alex, in that same vein with hashtags, tagging other people in your posts? Because I often get tagged in things that aren't necessarily relevant to me, and then I get notifications about those for days on end. But I mean, at what point should you tag a whole lot of people in your post? What's the etiquette around that?
Only if it's relevant to the person, and also don't tag 50 people. Just tag 10, max 15, but even then that's a lot. I would just say max, just keep it at 12, and only people that it's relevant for, because if not, I had a friend that tagged someone that she didn't know but she thought might be interested, and he got into such a huff publicly, And that's when you're like, okay, that's going to do more damage than good. So be cautious of that, because everything that you do on LinkedIn is your brand reputation. So be really conscious of the decisions you make when you are putting stuff out there and engaging with people.
So I think there are a couple. Lauren's asked a question here about the ideal length of written content.
So it depends what content. In your status updates, you've only got 3,000 characters, if I'm not mistaken, or 2,000 something. Use everything if you can and if you want to, because you've got the time and the space. In terms of videos, I don't tend to make them more than 3 to 4 minutes max, so 3.5. Short and snappy is better. That being said, I would say it highly depends on the skill of engaging people. So I would like to say that I can engage people with the story for longer than 3 minutes. And one day I wrote or shared a video that was 8 minutes long, and it was one of my most viewed videos ever. And I could tell people watched it to the end, because some of the comments were referring to stuff that I was talking in like 6 or 7 minutes. I would suggest short and snappy is better because people have limited time, but that's not to say you can't do longer, as long as you are capable of holding someone's attention.
Okay, cool. I have a quick question about, and I think somebody asked this earlier in the group, and it might well also be that it's the time that we're in, getting kind of unsolicited requests from people, or requests from people the way you do have mutual connections, but then as soon as you accept them, you get some kind of hard sell followed up on
I just removed them.
Okay. So, but like,
I'm pretty brutal.
But I mean, should we accept requests from people we don't know necessarily, or where the face of it?
I would say, unless it's if it's someone that you think is relevant to you and what you do. Okay. If it's not, then not really. But there's one exception to that, and a lot of people don't think about this when they're adding people themselves or they're accepting requests. What people tend to do is like, if I can do business with them or if I can hire them, I will say yes. What we tend to forget are the people that are in between. So these are people that, for example, if you have a business, they sell to the same type of client, but they have a different service or product. That is a person worth having in your network. Why? Because if you do good content and it's relevant to that person, they will click like or comment, and what happens is your content then gets seen in their network, which is a pool of your potential clients because you have the same clients. These kind of in-between people are often forgotten as important people to have in your network, because they can give you access to the clients that you're looking for. Or again, if in the terms of hiring someone, they might not be the person you hire, but in their role or their industry, they might have lots of people like themselves, and actually they might be the key to then, getting into other networks to hire other people.
Martha's just said, I always message them back and ask how I can help rather than just accept the request. Helps to see if we should be connected. That's really good advice, Martha.
That's really good. That gets a little bit harder when you have a large audience like me and you get so many requests. I don't have time to reply to that, but if you can, then yeah, that's really good.
Brilliant. So does anyone else have any other questions? Or, I mean, I will copy you in on the follow-up email, Alex, so if anyone wants to ask you anything else directly. I know that we have a lot of time. I had a question about groups, actually, and how valid those are in terms of engagement. I mean, I'm sure that's probably a whole other chapter.
I mean, group is an interesting one. It really still is something that, and Pods has come out a lot, and I'll answer that too. Groups used to be very dead. I would say is still pretty dead, even though they've made changes. I would still not invest time in groups personally. It's just not getting for example, the LinkedIn lives that I'm doing, I hashtagged it Authentic Alex Live, and I've got a group for those events, but that group's actually on Facebook. So that goes to show that I'm not using groups because it's just not, it doesn't have enough engagement and enough features. Like, for example, the group that I have on Facebook has the units, and so I'm putting every speaker as a unit and adding additional resources. I just can't get that on LinkedIn. That, and the engagement's still very low. And every now and then I go into groups that are very active and I see if anything has changed, and still, like, there's either no likes or no comments on stuff, and these are groups that have tens of thousands of people. I'm like, until that changes, then I'm not, I'm not going to invest a lot of time in there.
I see Fiona Livingston's asked a question here about direct messaging new potential clients. What would your advice be around that?
Definitely, but do not sell. You want to connect with people and just say, I'm interested in this industry too. I'd love to connect for us to share valuable information. Just find a way to engage with them and start to build a relationship. But whatever you do when you're messaging prospective clients, do not sell them anything.
And I see you have LinkedIn Premium, which is, I'm sure you need that, but would your advice be that in order to really utilize the platform, you should be paying for features, or can you generate?
I love that question. The only reason I have Premium is because LinkedIn gives it to me because of I got it for being a LinkedIn learning instructor. So you get access to it for a year. I have never ever used LinkedIn Premium. Everything that I have done has been just through my own profile. I have not spent a dime on LinkedIn, apart from obviously, and that's pretty much it. And that's only recently. So everything that I've done, honestly, I wouldn't recommend Premium. I think it's a lot of money for not much more difference, unless you're a big business that needs to hire lots of people or find a lot of people, and also don't automate messages. I've asked people, does it actually work? And they're like, there's maybe like 5% or like 2% that reply with interested, and one of them qualifies. But all that time, just spend it on creating content instead.
Okay, brilliant.
Yeah, the banner design, don't worry, I'll share it. The other one that I wanted to share with you is the question on LinkedIn pods. I feel like they're a waste of time. I've been on one or two. They're quite distracting. Some of them are very you should engage in my content. You have to think about, and like I said, I've already said it, but your reputation is really important when you're building your thought leadership brand on LinkedIn. If you are in a pod with someone that's not in your industry, or they're sharing content. So for those of you that don't know what pods are, I think I probably explained, but it's where a group of people show up in a LinkedIn message or group and they share links to their content, and you engage with it quickly to kind of rig the algorithm or cheat the algorithm. The reason I don't like it is because I have a very specific audience that I've grown that have very specific interests, and I know what those are. If you're in a pod, you're required to engage in other people's content. But what if that content doesn't resonate with your audience? You're doing more damage than good. So just don't do it. And also, it's just a waste of time. There are different strategies that are much more effective than being in a pod.
Okay. And then I think the one question that's come up a few times, and maybe that should be our last one, and the rest we can kind of summarize in the follow-up, is if people are looking for work or transitioning, should you say that? Should you say you're available for work, or you're looking for new opportunities?
Yeah. So if you are and your employer knows, or if you're unemployed, definitely write a post. Don't be afraid. And I know it's really hard because that requires a certain level of courage to show up and be like, I don't have a job, I'm looking for one. If you want to do it more discreetly because you don't want your employer to know, there is in the settings function a way for you to notify recruiters and companies that you're available. So go into your settings and look for the, it's a button that you turn on to notify that you're available for hire. And just click that, because it will do that, but in a very discreet way versus putting it in your headline or your summary or whatever.
Brilliant. Thank you. Great. Well, I know we've gone over time, but Alex, wow, thanks so much. And I think this has so far been the most engaging session in terms of questions, and they're still coming. So thank you very, very much. Really appreciate your time.
Definitely.
And maybe we'll even get a chance to run one of these again at some point. And by all means, in the follow-up, I mean, share any information that you might need where we might be able to help you if there's anything that you need help with. We can kind of get our community brain to feedback on how we can pay it forward. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for joining us, everyone.